Good afternoon. I call to order the Lake Havasu Metropolitan Planning Organization Executive Board meeting on Tuesday, June 14th at 2 p.m. If you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Recording in progress.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Ms. Lojewski, if you could please call the roll.
Thank you. Cal Sheehy,
Here.
Buster Johnson,
Here.
Nancy Campbell, Gary Knight,
Present.
Jenny Koch.
Here.
Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, item 4 on the agenda is a call to the public. This is an opportunity where citizens have wishing to address the executive board on issues within the jurisdiction of the Metropolitan Planning Organization planning area that are not on the agenda, and comments shall be limited to 5 minutes or less. We don't have anyone in person today, and so we'll go ahead and close the call to the public. Item 5 is our meeting minutes from April 12th. I entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Knight and a second from Councilmember Koch. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
All right, motion carries. Item 6 is the Title VI Plan and Annual Report. Mr. Hembry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. In the email that Ms. Lajewski sent out, you should have received the copy of the 2022 Title VI Plan and Annual Report. Just as an update, our Title VI Plan is our non-discrimination policy that is required for subrecipients of federal funds. It's something we must have. This year, every 3 years, the state comes in and does an on-site compliance review. They look at our procurement policies, our contracts, our public involvement processes, and basically make sure that we're compliant. In your packet is that report that basically I highlighted the section that says, hey, guess what? You're compliant, woohoo. So for this year, we didn't receive any complaints. There were no Title VI complaints. This draft plan was already sent to the state for a preliminary review, and we got conditional approval. So everything is basically already set and done to make the board's jobs much easier for approval. As soon as we approve today, it will be forwarded to the state, which has already given us, again, the conditional approval. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but any changes to the plan are highlighted on the very last page on Exhibit E. We put that in there annually that shows exactly what pages and what changes were made. Typically, it's just your demographics information and the rosters for our technical advisory committees and our executive boards.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Hembry. Are there any questions of members of the board?
Mr. Chairman, this is Board Member Knight. Just a quick question. I know we just got the report on the Title VI, but don't we also have to read the Title VI prior to continuing with the meeting?
Good catch, Gary. So you could do two things. That was actually one of the areas that they talked about heavily this year. So when you're doing virtual for Zooms or a GoToMeeting, you can either read the Title VI notice or you can post it in the chat box. So that's usually what we do is we post it in the chat box. And that's compliant. That was ADOT gave us the green light as far as that. That will suffice if you either read it out loud or post it into your chat box on your virtual. So for this meeting, we just chose to post it in our chat box.
Great. Thank you for your explanation.
But good catch, Gary. Thank you for keeping us honest.
Are there any other questions on the Title VI Plan and Annual Report? All right. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor,
Yes,
I make a motion.
please.
Motion to approve the Title VI plan as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion. Are we going to need two motions, one for the annual report and then one for the plan?
No, just the plan itself. The
Just the
report
plan.
was just a summarization of it.
Great. All right, well, we have a motion from Councilmember Koch and a second from Supervisor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7 on our agenda is the fiscal year 2022-2023 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment Number 2. Mr. Hembry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Steve, if we could please share the screen with the group on Zoom. I had a table to go over for our UPWP Amendment Number 2. So as you'll recall, our work program is our 2-year contract that basically explains our funding for 2 years and what our planning activities are going to consist of. The main reason for this amendment is additional funding and new federal funding programs. So when the executive board approved the work program last year, they were using the 2021 distribution formulas. The IIJA, the 5-year authorization hadn't come out yet. So they basically just took the 2021 distribution formulas and said, we're going to continue with these until the new 5-year authorization comes out and the 2020 census population, because these formulas are population based. So with that, the ADOT MPD Finance reached out and said, your current funding for your PL, your 5305, your SPR, and your STBG are all going up. In addition, you're also getting a new federal program called the Carbon Reduction Program. So with that, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I made 2 tables in the work program. The first one was our existing annual funding. And as you could see, the PL, 5305, SPR, and STBG apportionments, that was the existing as of a few months ago. With the new IIJA and the new authorizations, the table below, there are significant changes. In PL, that has increased by 27,000. It went from federal state funds from 125 to 154 as far as the overall apportionment. 5305 apportionment went from 57,000 to 64. SPR stayed the same. And then STBG went from 302,000 up to 304. And then for our carbon reduction, there's a totally new funding source. For appropriations is 122,000. Now the OA, that is the way that the state explains the difference between our appropriations and our OA is almost like a tax. The appropriations is what you're entitled to, but you're not allowed to spend that amount. The OA is really the amount at the end of the day, dollar for dollar, that you can spend. So again, there are increases. We see a difference in PL of 27,000, 5305 of 7,000, roughly $1,000 in STBG, and then 116,000 of brand new carbon reduction. Now, we're still waiting for some guidance on the carbon reduction program. As far as eligibility, I will send out an email that highlights some of those projects, but in essence, it's exactly what it sounds like, is any projects to reduce carbon emissions or congestion. So I think they're really gonna hit on sidewalks, bicycle and pedestrian type projects. You can do some signal optimization type projects, anything again to just reduce carbon emissions type projects. But again, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of unknowns. So for right now, we just know the level of funding we have, but we don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of the program. So we're still waiting on some guidance on that. But anytime federally, anytime you add funding to your work program or reduce funding, you have to do a formal work program amendment, and that's what this is. This is our second work program amendment for the FY 22-23 period. So with that, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'd be happy to answer any question, but so far, it's been Christmas came early. You've seen there's quite an increase in funding here, so it is good news.
Yeah, excellent. Are there any questions from members of the board for Mr. Hembry? All right, seeing none or hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Supervisor Johnson and we have a second from Board Member Knight. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 8 is the transportation, or the fiscal year 2022 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment Number 2. Mr. Hembry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this project's actually been a doozy. This one's been on the books for several years. It originally was a highway safety improvement project at the intersection of Acoma and Swanson for a traffic signal. However, in the last few months, there was actually a fatality on McCulloch and Jamaica. Long story short, after looking at the 2 intersections, city staff raised concern with the older project that was at Swanson and Acoma as far as lack of right-of-way, just the warrant in general. So we approached the state and said, would it be feasible to switch? We were awarded on the original project just over $1 million. It was $1,049,000 for those improvements, for those safety improvements. And the city staff and the MPO approached ADOT and said, could we move those funds from this intersection to the McCulloch and Jamaica intersection because of this fatality? ADOT was actually very flexible and agreed, with the exception that we had to do an engineering analysis on the intersection. So Greenlight Traffic Engineering, our consultant, they put together a revised application, if you will, and a traffic signal warrant. And we have submitted that to the state. That's under review right now. So nothing is official, nothing is final. However, the state said we can't just revise this project because it's a new, basically scope, because it's moving locations. We have to go ahead and cancel the original project number and name and create a brand new one. And that's the reasoning behind this TIP amendment, is to not necessarily cancel the project, but just cancel the project title and switch it over. Again, it is, I don't want to make it seem like it's a done deal. This thing could still fall apart, unfortunately. We're waiting to hear back from traffic safety section. But from what I've read of the analysis, they should not have a problem with the justification and the numbers to move those safety funds from one intersection to the next. So if all goes according to plan, hopefully in FY23, we would kick off design for McCulloch and Jamaica for a traffic signal. With that, Mr. Chairman and member of the board, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hembry. Are there any questions from members of the board for Mr. Hembry? Hearing none and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion from Supervisor Johnson and a second from Councilmember Koch. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, will all those in favor please say aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 9 is the fiscal year 25-26 HSIP application update. Mr. Hembry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick status update on our projects. We have sent the draft applications into the state as of the end of May. The state will review and get back with the local agencies on any corrections or revisions needed by the end of June, and then we will submit in the July timeframe. In your packet, apologies, we actually put that item. There's 2 handouts underneath item number 10 that show the project applications for 25 and 26 and the schedule. But just an oversight on my side, I accidentally slipped it underneath the RTAC update instead of number 9. But just to quickly run over those applications again, the first one was for State Route 95 raised median. That's actually the district. There's roughly $4 million going in for improvements there if awarded. The second project would be Swanson Avenue intersections. There's a few crosswalks around Wing Loop, Mariposa, for installation of rapid flashing beacons. There's already signs there. It would just be installing the LED flashers to bring more attention to those crosswalks. There's one out in the county for Horizon 6. Again, it's the Gold Springs Blue Canyon, trying to widen those roads out there, give them a little bit more of a shoulder in that area. The fourth one was one that we didn't really talk about too much at the last meeting, but a traffic signal warrant study for all the unsignalized intersections out in Lake Havasu City. Basically, if you want safety funds in the future, you have to have that engineering analysis, very much like the project we just talked about on the last agenda item. If you try to pursue safety funds, you have to have an engineering analysis that states there's a need there. So with that, we looked at all the intersections and put together a list. And if awarded this couple $100,000 signal warrant study, our consultant would come in and basically do the engineering analysis for all the major non-signalized intersections throughout Havasu. And then in turn, we could take those reports and pursue additional grant funds in the future. So that's all under one application that the MPO is putting in. And then also the systemic feedback signs. We did increase the price on that, and the routes, I have a different list here. We just updated this. There's actually 10 roads. It's along SR 95, Acoma, McCulloch, Palo Verde, Lake Havasu Avenue, Kiowa, Jamaica, Beachcomber, and Mesquite, and Swanson. And we requested 40 signs in total, and these are the feed speed back. Again, they flash, they let you know your speed. Roughly it's 4 signs per road, and then the local agency have awarded would have the discretion to put those signs that would have the most impact. So probably a future evaluation of awarded would go into the sheriff's office or some kind of enforcement to see which areas there's the highest speeds. Typically, you post them where your existing regulatory speeds are already located. That just makes the most sense. But you could see based off the data areas that have higher levels of speed and choose to supplement your static signs with a different location. So with that, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, happy to answer questions, but we're, again, just submitted the draft applications and we will submit the final revisions here at the end of July.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any members of the board for Mr. Hembury? All right, we'll move on then to item 10, which is the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council report. Is Mr. Adam on? I didn't see him earlier. He's on.
He texted me and said he would be here about 15 after, but he may be running a few minutes behind.
Okay, so we'll circle back if that works. So then we'll move on to item 11, the ADOT district report. Mr. Steinenberger.
Good afternoon, board. Just some brief updates that will impact the region. First of all, on the development side, we've got the pavement preservation project that was state funded. We're currently under design for that project. It's planned to advertise at the end of November, early December of this year. We have the pavement preservation project that we're looking to do from milepost 2 to milepost 8 on I-40. That's a mill and fill project, and it's anticipated to advertise next year around October. We've got a minor surface treatment project from the California line to milepost 2 on I-40. That's going to advertise this summer, and then heading from milepost 33 to 44, heading into Kingman on I-40. We have a mill and fill project that's slated to advertise December of this year. And then we're currently planning to meet tomorrow with the MPO and city staff to start working on a plan for signal coordination on SR 95 and Lake Havasu Avenue. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Steinenberger? Yeah, great. Thank you for the update. All right, moving on to item 12 is the Arizona Transportation Board report. Mr. Knight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got kind of a lengthy list. This goes clear back to last month's Transportation Board meeting where there were quite a number of projects and quite a few in Mojave County. US 93 and I-40 west of Kingman, TI, constructed TI. It was on the agenda for increasing the budget from 6.5 million to 9 million. That was passed by the board. SR 95 Needles Bridge rehabilitation, increase the budget from 1.6 mil to 2.4 million. Needles pays half, or 1.2 million. That was approved. Northern Avenue, highway safety improvement, complete streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, crosswalks, and traffic signals, 45,000. That's establish a new project. That was approved. Same as above, except not highway safety improvement program money for 173,000. It was approved. Mojave County, various routes and various locations. HSIP raised pavement markers, curve signs, 30,000, and that was approved. That was establishing a new project. Same as the last one, establishing a new project, 180,000. Yeah, that's also HSIP. It's the same location, various locations in Mojave County. London Bridge Road, bike lanes and signage, $200,000, establish a new project. That was approved by the board. Boundary, Cone Road and Oatman Highway, rumble strips. That was approved. SR 68, milepost 1.8 and 5.7, Union Pass truck escape ramps. Install monitoring systems, 120,000. That's a new project. It's replace old systems, and that was approved. Various locations, Northwest Region, Kingman, replace vehicle detection devices. And then that was in May. What we've got coming up for Friday on the board's agenda, there's one for Mojave County. It's up for board approval, so after the meeting, we'll know if it was approved. I'm sure it will be. Establish a new project. 6 roadway segments in the city of Kingman. Install speed feedback signs. HSIP funds $234,000. City funds $101,000 for a total of $335,000, and that was due to fatal and serious crashes. And that completes my report from the State Transportation Board. We will have a meeting Friday, San Carlos Indian Community, east of Globe. That will be at 9 a.m. on Friday morning. It will be available virtually as well as in person. And at least that's the way it's listed at the present time. So anyway, if anybody wants to view the meeting, they can view it through WebEx online or be there in person. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Knight. Are there any questions of any members of the board? All right, well, thank you for your report.
And I do believe, Mr. Chairman, Kevin has joined the meeting.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, Mr. Adam, are you on?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, thank you for being here.
Terrific. Matt, are you ready for my update?
Yes, we are.
Terrific. Yeah, a lot going on to report at the state capitol. We are past the 150th day of session, and we're only about 2 weeks out before the new state fiscal year starts. Unfortunately, I don't think they are close to having the votes for a budget. Not only is there significant level of disagreement, they are at a point of the year where they are starting to lose members to it's not just a question of having a majority, it's whether you have enough members present to actually pass legislation, including the budget. In fact, when the House convened on Monday, they only had 37 of the 60 members present. So that's just going to make it that much more difficult to enact a budget and wrap up things for the year. But with that said, about 10 days ago, there was a very significant development, and that was when the legislative leadership, the Speaker, and the Senate President came to an agreement with the governor on a budget framework. And so very significant that you've got leadership in agreement on what they want to see. But after making the initial rounds, I think it was pretty clear that there's still some votes short of what is needed for enactment. It appears that there's a lot of pressure to increase K-12 spending, and that appears to sort of be the focus of their efforts to try to make some adjustments. For the infrastructure, what's in that leadership agreement is tremendous. First off, we do have record levels of revenue. Back in April, their Finance Advisory Committee had their quarterly meeting, and they adjusted the revenue outlook to estimating that they had about a 5.2 cash balance that they would have, about $3 billion of that being one-time in nature. And then since then, the April revenue numbers came in, and we broke the record. That was the highest amount of revenue ever collected in 1 month in the history of the state. $2 billion alone. And what was probably more significant was that was $500 million above what was already a very positive outlook. And so that $5.23 billion estimate from before is probably closer to 6 now. So this structure that they have also, they're not going to spend it all. In fact, at this point, it looks like they're planning on having a cash balance of about $4 billion. But getting back to the transportation, there's about $1 billion in one-time revenues that they'll be dedicating to transportation. We already knew they had already enacted $400 million to complete the I-10 widening between Phoenix and Tucson. There's about a 26-mile stretch that needs to have lanes added to where there are 3 lanes in both directions for the entire segment. And they needed to get that funding enacted sooner so that it would be available in a part of ADOT's application for a federal competitive grant for an additional $300 million. So I think we've got a very competitive grant that's been put together for the state for that additional $300 million, and securing that $400 million from the state legislature, I think, was vital to that. In addition to that, the governor had proposed the SMART Fund, which is $50 million that would be available to all of Greater Arizona, and that will go to application assistance as well as local match funding for federal competitive grants. And again, this is exclusive to Greater Arizona. So I think if enacted, that'll give us a tremendous leg up on maximizing the available federal funding that we can bring into the rural parts of the state. In addition, there was about $120 million that was provided for inflation. And of course, that's, with all of this good news, that's probably the real negative at this point, is that I know inflation is hitting all the sectors, but it's even impacting the construction industry significantly more, and unfortunately probably going to eat into a lot of this additional revenue that's been available. But there's about $120 million that they've directed to inflation. That covers everything from pavement rehabilitation to other undergoing, projects that are already underway. That includes, I believe it's about $3 million for the 95 improvements through Havasu and Bullhead. Clearly not close to the level that I know is needed to do all of the work that both of your communities want, but at least there is some inflationary adjustment. And then on top of that, there's what we have seen so far is a 10-page summary. And so for the state projects, they line itemed and specifically listed the state projects. But for local, they kept it at one line. It's described as rural Arizona projects with $66 million. And all indications are that those are the projects that were included in the RTAC legislation, House Bill 2396, which I believe Lake Havasu's allocation was, I believe it was the Swenson Road improvements or probably a pavement rehab project there. I'm sure Justin could correct me if I've got that project wrong. But at this point, we're in real good shape as far as infrastructure being included in that budget. I indicated that they don't have the votes yet, but fortunately, infrastructure doesn't appear to be one of the objections You never know till it's over. But right now, all indications are that all of that transportation funding will remain. And again, the deadline is, they got to get a new budget in place before July 1st. It looks like that will be a task, but there will be tremendous pressure to do so. So I'm hopeful we'll have a budget enacted within the next 2 weeks. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Are there any questions from members of the board? All right, hearing none, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move on to item 13. Are there any future agenda items that any members of the board have? All right, our upcoming meeting schedule, our next Lake Havasu Metropolitan Planning Organization TAC meeting is on July 26th, 2022 at 1:30 p.m. And then our next MPO Executive Board meeting will be August 9th, 2022 at 2 p.m. There also, as Mr. Knight mentioned, a State Transportation Board meeting on June 17th, 2022 in San Carlos, Arizona. All right, the final item is motion to adjourn. All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time.